All right, Brett, how's your day going so far?
Dude, it's great. Just left the gym, came back. I'm talking with you. Things are good so far.
Awesome, awesome. I just want to jump straight into your
Sure.
film, talk about the Andy Baker tapes. Um, I'm interested in what sparked your idea for this. Like, what were you thinking about when you initially decided that this was a script you wanted to write?
That's a great question. It was the top of the pandemic, and I just came off a short film that won the Academy Award. I was in a lot of filmmaking. I got a grant through SAG then, and I bought a camera, and I was co-producing some shorts with Dustin to keep myself occupied during the lockdown. We made a couple short films, and we had this idea to do this mockumentary kind of road trip going out to the Grand Canyon and Big Sur. We were going to shoot this weird kind of Heart of Darkness American story mockumentary. And we decided that if we were going to spend 2 weeks on the road, we better script this out. And we started writing the script in this found footage style. And we realized that if we were going to do this well, we had to make it more self-contained and stay in a singular location. So Dustin and I wrote this. We both grew up at the Jersey Shore as an homage to New Jersey. We were both staying in New Jersey during the pandemic, and we really just wanted a project that we could act opposite in and create something to keep ourselves artistically fulfilled during the lockdown.
Nice. I interested. You say we. How big was the team that put this together? Because
So
I
the
know you
yeah,
you direct, you produce, and you write and you act, right?
in this, I directed, I wrote with Dustin, I edited, I color graded it, we acted in it. There was really a team of four that was essential to the filming. For the most part, it was Dustin and myself. Dustin and I co-wrote the project over 3 months. We outsourced some things to another producer on it, Arthur Giamelitis, who is a brilliant sound engineer based in Melbourne, Australia. He did most of our post-production sound for us, but the on-set recording, Dustin and I did together. Our other producer on this is Caitlin Borick, and I would say 95% of the film is Dustin and myself doing all the camera work, but there's just some shots that were so tricky and would be impossible to do without a third hand. And Caitlin came in at the end and did a lot of the extra hand behind the camera. And she also served as an editing producer. She worked with us on dialing in the story and was a huge part of our film festival run, helping us export the film and get out and do a lot of the networking for that. But the initial team on this was Dustin and myself for the first 3 months. And at the end, we brought in everyone else to fill in the gaps that we couldn't do ourselves.
So is Dustin a co-writer, or is Dustin also the one who plays Andy Baker?
Dustin plays Andy Baker, and he's also a co-writer on the project.
Oh, okay, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. You acted in a lot of things as well. So I was curious what you started or what you were initially interested in. Were you interested in making films and hopefully starting to act to get there? Or were you interested in acting, and then once you started acting, you realized that you kind of wanted to be behind the camera too?
It's a great question. I was always a sucker for films. As a kid, I grew up watching every TCM movie I could, and I was a cinephile. I could just watch, I think my high school years, I spent no time in class, and I spent every free time I could competitive swimming or watching movies. So I always had an appreciation for performances in films. I did go to drama school. I went to a conservatory where I met Dustin, and Dustin was in my acting class at the time. We stayed friends over the years. For the first few years out of school, my career was entirely geared towards acting. I worked in television a lot. I first started doing some theater, and I did a lot of network TV out of New York. I was on Law and Order, Orange is the New Black, Pose, Alpha House, a lot of the shows that are films out of the East Coast. I got involved producing in 2018. A great friend of mine, Shawnee Shagru, put up a script called Misty Button, which we shot around New York City. And that was my first foray to really getting behind the camera and working as a story editor and seeing a film from the other angles. I've been on film shoots from start to finish for 3 months as an actor, but this was really seeing a project become birthed from page to final product. And I love that. When I did this Lifetime show called I Love You, But I Lied, and it was their first scripted show. And it was this brilliant showrunner, Michael Seldich, and he took this formula of doing things in almost a found footage style. And I remember watching him work on this and working with the DP, and I thought this was such a quick and efficient way to shoot something that's a massive story and get it up like that, because you don't have to worry about, I mean, you have to worry about lighting in some aspects, but we're not shooting Dune. You're not shooting these grand things where you have to light as if, you're Roger Deakins working on this. And that is, during the lockdown, we were both, Dustin was a blue man working out of Boston. I was an actor out of New York. We're both kind of out of work, waiting for things to come in. So we also didn't have the budget to bring in an entire lighting team. It was just really self-contained that way. And
it worked out, I think, because it's really grounded. I mean, it was supposed to be like real life.
Well, that is something that we really focused on, both of us. We watched a lot of, I was never really a found footage junkie until I started working on this project. And I watched, I'd say 30 or 40 found footage films to see what worked and what didn't work. And the ones that had a true sense of earnest realism that you were like, wait, is this actually that was the style that we were trying to emulate and go after. And the acting and the script writing and everything about this, we wanted people to really believe that these were two brothers coming together, meeting for the first time, going through this experience together. And if there was any kind of gloss or glib or extra sauce put onto that, it would have broken that illusion. So in the writing, the directing, the acting, we truly focused on being earnest, direct, no extraneous words or passages, just simple and to the point.
So when so I know that you co-wrote with say Dustin?
Yes, Dustin, yeah.
Which one of you had the inception for the idea? Was it you or was it Dustin?
I don't even, I don't know. Originally, it was almost a supernatural story, and we were debating. I mean, we really wanted to write something that would just get us together. So we were trying to come up with ideas of how we can get a feature film, a two-hander done with just two people. And I think it was kind of an amalgam of figuring out, well, we can use this and we can use this. It was we knew that we could do this kind of documentary style, and it was trying to figure out how we get in the other character and the involvement there. The food angle, I believe, was, I'm a foodie, I'm obsessed with food, and the food angle part of the film was me, and Dustin was, he's really good friends with Casey Neistat's a manager or producer. So we started watching all these YouTube personas, and we stole from, Casey Neistat. There's a food blogger, Mark Weems, that I watched a lot, and I really liked his. So we kind of took those styles and put that together. And it was, it truly, the script writing of this was 50-50. It was us figuring out how we were going to balance this. And it was us just pulling ideas together until we had something that was cohesive. And we're like, this feels right.
So I want to know, he has a beard in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell, like, you guys kind of look like you could be brothers with his beard. I was wondering if he grew it to hide the facial features that don't look the same as yours, or if he just naturally wears the beard.
No, he's a blue man, and he could never grow a beard. So he has to, he has the latex head and he has the smooth face. So during the pandemic, much to the dismay of his fiance, he grew out this giant quarantine beard. And we're like, this, if you're going to play a South Jersey boonie, perfect. You're not shaving it for this. And it was great that he had that. His beard matches my hair color. It's like everything about that, it kind of works. So it just made us, it was just a perfect mix. And, it was his idea. He wears overalls in real life all the time. We toured this film a lot last summer, and we ended up going to St. Elmo's Steakhouse in Indianapolis. And St. Elmo's is one of the top steakhouses in the United States. You're going there. And he rolled up wearing this great pair. He calls them bibs, his overalls, no shirt underneath. And that's just Dustin as a person. He has this fun, I really don't care style to him, which just works. And it worked for Andy so well.
So did you have to pitch the script to like the producer? I know you said there were four of you.
No, those are my friends, and
Oh,
Caitlin is my girlfriend. So I was able to work, I was able to enlist the people that I worked with, and Arthur, Dustin and I both knew through college. He was a study abroad student. We all went to Montclair State University in North Jersey in the acting program. And Arthur is Australian. Most of my family is Australian. I bond with Aussies really well. We just kind of have the same sensibilities. And Arthur and I stayed friends over the years. And he worked as an actor, as a producer, and as a radio DJ. And I approached him asking some sound questions, and then he got more and more hands-on and involved. And he said, "You know what, mate? I'll do this for you. I'll work on this for you." He gave so much of his time, and without him, we wouldn't have a finished product. So I made some changes where I'll color grade his footage. I'll do this, but he truly did it out of wanting to get involved in films more, from coming from a radio background and just being a good friend. Caitlin is a gem to work with. She loves horror films. She loves films in general. She's the kind of person that'll be like, "Oh, you have a great idea? Let's go do it." And I found that those are the people that you want on your team, the ones that are like, "Yeah, let's get involved. Let's go do something great." And Caitlin just has this attitude where it's like, we'll worry about the consequences later. Let's dive in. And we needed people like that on a project of this scale.
right. Now, so to actually talk more about the plot of the film, when it comes to, like, let's say you didn't have to pitch because they were your friends, but if you were to pitch to people who are considering watching the film, how would, from your perspective, how would that go?
We leave it straight and simple. We're billing the film as the last known footage of food blogger Jeff Blake and his last brother Andy Baker. I think that covers all the things that needs to be heard. I think it leaves enough ominous mystery there. When we were developing it, it's an homage to some classic films. It's basically Planes, Trains, and Automobiles meets the Blair Witch Project. And like that is what we put together. We've been getting post-production a lot of compares to Creep. And no doubt we watched Creep halfway through the film writing process. We put on Creep and we were like, wow, this is insane to us. How, we did it, we absolutely, I was trying to figure out shots. Totally. We like, well, this worked in Creep. What's our twist on this? And we didn't want to have identical film. The stories are somewhat similar, but truly, when we were writing this and came up with the concept, I had no idea that film even existed. But it's a masterpiece in its own right, and it would be a disservice, to anyone that's studying the found footage genre to not see that film and be like, wow, what they did in this is truly remarkable.
Right. I totally, I agree with you 100% with what you have to say, but I kind of want to talk about spoilers. So
sure.
At this point, if anybody, actually reading, listening, watching, whichever it is, you might want to tune out, because I'm going to start asking spoilers, and make sure you check out the movie on 8/5 when it comes out. And in the meantime, we're going to get into spoilers right now. So I want to know, there was a point towards the end of the movie where Dustin or Andy had poured stuff on your head. Mm-hmm. What was it that he poured on your head? Because I couldn't hear it.
Oh, sure. So the in the beginning of the film, when we arrive, Andy makes him spaghetti, and he uses a inexpensive sauce. I can't say brand names, but he uses your most basic discount sauce. At the end, we used a super high end, I also can't say brand names because we mark it off, but we used the most expensive $14.99 bottle of tomato sauce to kind of show the discrepancy of Jeff and Andy. Andy's here, Jeff's here. And a lot of those things in the film are, we try to make full circle. The film starts off with Jeff leaving his house, running outside to his car, The ending is the exact same format, but it's night and dark. When we first see Andy, it's at this broken house. When we see Jeff, and at the end, they're going down to the basement of the house. We tried to get as many connections and familial references sprinkled in, and that's just a callback to the beginning of the film when Andy is making pasta with the inexpensive sauce.
That is really funny. I didn't even think about that, because I was like, I don't think it's blood or anything gross, but I thought it was pasta sauce.
It was another bottle of high-end pasta sauce, and I think Andy has a line along the lines of it tastes like tomato perfume. It's like, this is a better sauce, tastes like tomato perfume, right before he pours the sauce on Jeff's head.
Because I remember Jeff had made a comment about saying, like, that's not food. Like, that's
yeah, totally. And they're all callbacks to the beginning of that.
Callbacks really level up the
film. And we were lucky. Some of them were coincidental. Some of them were absolutely pointed plots that we decided to circle back in. Originally in that script, if we're going to get to the end, he also poured black beans all over Jeff's head too. And the truth is that those shots, because at the end, it's a single take shot for 15 minutes, but it's truly 5 or 6 cuts that are put together. And if when we did it, we had one take of that tomato sauce because it was 3 a.m. and we just didn't have time to do more. So we had to make sure that we could get it all and get on to the next scene or the next slice in the film, because if we were to have to reset, it would be an hour of wiping the floors off, wiping down Jeff, getting Jeff primed and propped up again. So that stuff is done in one take, and the black beans got X'd because it was a little bit extraneous, but I think we got the point of the humiliation that Andy was trying to do to Jeff through that.
Right. And my initial thought process when I was watching the movie is I always try to think, like, what order were these scenes shot in?
Yeah.
So I was curious at that time whether the shower that you took in the hotel was filmed after that stuff got poured on you, because you're actually washing it off. But it seems like you didn't have enough time to film that afterwards, right? So that's we truly, we shot the film for the most part chronological, and I don't want to give away the dead end, but when you see Jeff running out to the car at the end and you see him in the car, that's the same sauce that was on me from the beans being poured, from the sauce being poured. Right. So that's all continuous. We shot the hotel scene and the shower scene. That was done maybe a week prior to that. We thought originally this was going to be a 5-day shoot, and I think that was a gross underestimate, and we had some learning curves on this too. Traditionally, found footage is shot with a regular camera that, or with like a camcorder that has a blanket sensor where you're not worried about depth of field and focus and this. We used a cinema camera. We used a Panasonic, a low cinema camera, a Panasonic GH5, which has truly terrible autofocus for that quality of camera. And you don't have that camcorder blanket exposure where you have kind of the highlights and the lowlights, the dynamic range on that cinema camera dynamic range. And that was giving us so many issues. And I am not a trained cinematographer. I'm self-taught. So learning this, I learned so much more. But when we would have things where we would whip the shot around, we'd be out of focus, or we would have the foreground exposed and the background overexposed, or vice versa. And our secret weapon in some of those things was, I just got a brand new iPhone 12. And iPhone 12s have this algorithm where they expose for the highlights and the lowlights, and they combine it into a single image. So you kind of get this blanket exposure. And the autofocus on that with the small sensor is brilliant. Because we were shooting this found footage style, we could mix in where half of the stuff is shot with the GH5, half is shot with an iPhone 12, and in color grading and the post-production aspects, you can't tell that you use the 2 different cameras. The other thing about the iPhone is that we were shooting inside of a car, and a lot of those shots, you need to have such a wide frame of view. And if we were shooting inside the car with the cinema, we wouldn't have the same
wide, I didn't have a fish angle lens at the time, and we would have this distorted view if we use that. So we use the iPhone to capture the width of the car, and when we're turning on each other in that, to just give it a little bit more space, so we're not, like crunched up to the camera way too much. But it's a mix of those, and it took us 2 weeks to shoot everything. I think we started October 8th. We had maybe 1 or 2 days off in between, and I believe our last day of shooting was the 26th of October. And that was a very stressful 18-hour night, finish like filming the climax of that, where it really was just, it was Caitlin underneath a car seat holding the camera at the right position. It's about 4 or 5 shots that are cut up to look as if it's a single shot. And that was, we attempted it one night, and we realized that we needed to go back to the drawing board and plan more. And I'm so glad we took that extra night. I worked it out with Caitlin all throughout the day. I think we started that night at 10 in the morning, and we finished, or 10 at night, and we finished at about 8:30 in the morning. And if I didn't work with Caitlin during the day to figure out every minutia of that shot, we would have been up Schitt's Creek.
So if anybody from Apple, if you're listening or watching this,
yeah,
Bret is over here promoting your iPhone 12.
We owe you guys.
Yeah. Maybe help him produce his next film.
If you want to hop on board, Tim Cook, I'm with you. Okay.
So when the phone was, when you were driving and the phone was like moving and you were getting or the phone, but the camera kept moving and you were getting upset. And like,
yeah.
Was that Caitlin? Like,
no, that was in the beginning of the film, and that was Dustin and I. That's the only scene that is shot. Those scenes when we go to Andy's cabin, those are the only scenes that are not shot in New Jersey. We drove out to Bedford, Pennsylvania, because we were able to rent these great cabins, and we also wanted to take the trip, and we got to that beautiful state park. And that was Dustin. Dustin was underneath the car seat, kind of doing the same thing, because for the iPhone, we had a rig that could go on the dashboard and that would hold everything in place. For the camera and the cage, we didn't have a true car rig, so we had to have someone hold that up on top. And we needed to use the cinema camera for the lower light, because the iPhone was just a little bit too noisy in super low light. So that we had propped up, and that was Dustin kind of holding it. And that's a callback to the end too. At the end when the camera falls off too, they're all similar callbacks that we have. And that was Dustin doing that. And at the end in the car, that's Caitlin. Don't want to spoil anything, but that's Caitlin operating the camera at that point.
That makes sense. Not to spoil anything. Before I wrap, I want to make sure is there anything that people don't ask you about this film that you would like to share? Like that, I'm sure people ask you the same questions, like, "Oh, where'd you get your inspiration? Oh, what is it Blair Witch or Paranormal Activity?" I want to know what people don't ask you that you think is interesting to share with the audience.
That's a great question. I've toured this film a lot, and I think I've gotten every question possible thrown at me.
Here's the thing. That is such a common answer.
Yeah.
When I ask this question, that is such a common answer. I always like to give people a platform to express something that maybe they don't get a chance to in other interviews. But a lot of times at the end, they're like, I feel like I've been asked everything.
Yeah. One thing I think that is not necessarily a pitch for the film, but I think is important to say to anyone listening that's involved in film or filmmakers, there were a lot of ambitious elements to this film when we wrote that we weren't sure how we were going to execute. And we forced ourselves, said, no, we're not going to take a cheap way out. Let's figure out how we can do this. And I think that is something that's so great about film, is that you can write super ambitious projects. You can write ambitious things, and you may not have the skill or the knowledge at the time of conception to know how to execute on that. But if you put your will towards that, you can figure it out. Especially for us, I'd say that the hotel scene, the second hotel scene, the shower into everything else that happens there. Writing that on paper, it was truly, how are we going to figure out how to do this? And we went there, we mapped out some stuff beforehand, and shooting it that night, I think it came out better than we anticipated. And, we had a lot of missteps. It came to the point where we had to jerry rig a camera rig out of 2 butter knives that we jammed into the dashboard real fast as Jeff is driving away, just because, but we forced ourselves to figure it out in the moment. So if anything I could say is that for us, this project pushed our comfort zone. And I think it's so important that anyone involved in a creative endeavor does things to push them outside their comfort zone, because you truly do find, if there's a will, there's a way, and you'll figure it out. So if that can be a word of encouragement for anyone that's in the same vehicle that we are, take it from me.
Okay. And last thing, is there anything that you'd like to say for your social media, website, anything that you'd like to direct people?
Yeah. I hope everyone listening gets an opportunity to see the film. We do premiere August 5th through Terror Films. On August 12th, we have a wide premiere through other channels. And on August 18th, we premiere through Kings of Horror. You can find me. My name is Bret Lada, BRETLADA. My Instagram is Bret Meets World with 1 T, just like Boy Meets World. Dustin is Dusty Fawn if you want to follow him. Our Instagram's the Andy Baker Tape. But please, reach out. I hope you see the film. I hope it brings you joy. If anyone watching this, give us a shout out and have fun on the ride that we had fun creating.
And make sure you guys check it out, because honestly, it's not going to take up a lot of your day. It's not even an hour and a half long. Just take a little time, check it out, and you might be surprised.
Great.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Of course, Joe. Thank you so much, man.
It was an awesome conversation and a great movie too.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
The suspense there was awesome.
Right.
So make sure you stay safe, and I will talk to you soon.
You as well. Thanks.